I'm Jesse with Nursery Natives, and today we're talking trees, with our focus being on the flowering dogwood, Virginia state tree. By the way, Radford is selecting a city tree. More details on that at the end of the video. Meanwhile, we're here in Radford now, taking a look at this wild dogwood tree at the intersection of Sundale and Wadsworth, right alongside one of Radford's beautiful pathways, Riverway Park. But for today's episode, we're taking a road trip to Roanoke to meet today's expert guest, Dr. Katie Trazo. We'll see you there.
I'll take Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains in my dreams, from the foothills to the beach, and I'm flowing by, and I call it home.
Welcome back. We're here underneath the Memorial Bridge alongside the Greenway here in Roanoke, Virginia, and we have a tremendous guest joining us today, Program Associate of the Department of Agricultural Leadership and Community Education for Virginia Tech, Dr. Katie Trazo. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Can you tell us what we're taking a look at today?
Yes, this is the American dogwood, also known as the flowering dogwood, and the scientific name is Cornus florida.
And we just missed those beautiful flowers. It's the first day of June here. Can you tell us what it is that you love most about this tree?
Well, I was thinking about this today actually before we talked, and realized how much dogwood flowers have surrounded me my whole life. My mom loved the flower. It was also the state flower of North Carolina. And so I just realized, like, going back to my house occasionally and going through things, that there are so many dogwood flowers that were just surrounding me growing up, in decorations and jewelry, and also just felt the sense of this plant being so common across the landscape that it's really just this sense of family. And I really feel its steadiness and comfort guiding me through life and living, and so really appreciate this opportunity to talk about it.
Yes, as do I, and I'm really hearing that connection. And for those who aren't able to recognize it without the blossoms on it, could you tell us a little bit about how they might identify this tree?
Yes. Okay. So there are a couple ways. We'll start with the leaf. First, dogwoods are what's called opposite in form. And so the leaves come out at the same node.
Okay.
And there are a lot of trees where the leaves come out at different nodes. So if you see an opposite leaf arrangement, that's one clue that it could be dogwood. There are a number of other species that are opposite in arrangement, but it really narrows down the trees. If you notice that it's opposite, could very likely be dogwood. Then also looking at the leaf, it's just a simple oval shape. And what's really unique about this species is the leaf veins follow the margin, and they're curved. So they go like that. A lot of the other leaves go just kind of like in straight lines off of the main vein. So these follow this curve. That's what's called arcuate in scientific terms. And that's a really good way to tell that this is a dogwood leaf. Actually, I'm trying to remember, in dendrology, I learned that also you can break the leaf apart and you see this little latex in it
I do see
too.
that. Yeah. Connecting points there.
So that is the leaf. The bark, if you want to come take a look here, if you can see it, it has these tiny little blocks, and it's gray and ashy colored. And usually if it's a younger stem, it'll be smooth, but once it gets older, it'll start forming these little blocks. So that's another really good characteristic of this species. And even in winter, if you see that those little blocks, and if you see that it has opposite branching here, which is the same thing as these leaves being opposite, that's a good way to tell in winter. Then you'll see that the flowers are now starting to turn into berries. These will turn bright red in the fall, and those will persist even after the first frost. So that gives a really great food for birds into the winter.
Really supports a lot of the wildlife.
Yes.
And this tree obviously was intentionally planted Can you tell us, if we were to find this in the wild, anything that it prefers as far as growing conditions or where we might go to look for it?
Sure. So it is an understory tree, which means it can handle shade and it will grow under larger trees. So it grows in existing forests and also on forest edges. And you've observed correctly, this is a beloved tree, and so it's planted a lot in landscaping. And you'll find it across various types of soils. So it can be in wet soils or also dry soils. So it can live in variable habitats.
And that versatility probably helps a lot with planting it along roadsides and pretty much anywhere, right?
Yeah, yep. And this ranges from Canada to Florida, and it goes all the way west to Kansas and Oklahoma.
Wow, so covering a good portion of the states.
Yes. Yeah.
So we've touched a little bit on growing conditions, what you might look for identification purposes. And I'm curious if you can tell us a little bit about the connection with humans. I know you've got a personal connection, taking it way back to your childhood. Is there anything else that, from a historical significance standpoint, that maybe is important for our history as humans with these trees?
Yes, there are actually many species of dogwoods all across the world. And these species are typically blooming in early spring, and so there's an association and mythology around rebirth and fertility. So for instance, this was blooming right around Easter, and a lot of people associate this flower with Easter, so there's mythology and story around that as well. And we actually had an Easter bonnet parade here, and just posed in front of the dogwood with our bonnets on, and this was part of my bonnet. This is the flower, by the way. It's dried and it's not gonna show you everything, but these are the leafy petals, and then it's actually kind of interesting. These aren't flowers, like this whole thing isn't the flower. All these little individual flowers are what's actually technically the flower, and this has evolved over time. It's actually what's called a bract, which is a leafy structure that's trying to draw and attract insects to this flower. So you'll notice that the actual flower turned into these berries here. So one other thing about dogwoods is when they bloom, traditionally the indigenous people would look to the dogwood flowers for when to start planting. And there's a saying that when the dogwood leaves are the size of a squirrel's ear, that's when you would want to plant corn. So there's an indigenous connection with the phenology of this plant.
Talk about connections.
Yes.
That's fascinating. I did not know that. And you speak to this sort of biological clock and planting calendar that in many ways I think is probably far more accurate than even our rules of thumb of, Mother's Day or May 10 to put stuff in the ground. So much of what, if we look around closely, can be a much better indicator for us. So that's a fascinating story.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, the dogwood is such an odd name. I can't help but think about dogs, of course, but I don't know where that name originates from. Do you have any information on that for us, Katie?
Yeah, well, I was reading that there are actually two potential theories around the development of the name. One is that it did come from dogs, which were these shuttles that were used in weaving. And so the idea is that it was named after the shuttles, dogwood, because of the purpose of how it was used. And also the wood was used for daggers as well, and the Old English word for dagger is dog. So this was the dog wood, the wood that you go to for daggers, or for creating daggers.
Or perhaps dagwood once upon a time.
Yes.
And nowadays it's known as the dogwood or the flowering dogwood.
Yes.
And a beautiful tree that it is. Katie, we've shared a little bit about your work, and I am very interested in learning more about what you do here in the city of Roanoke. Can you tell us about opportunities to connect within the community that you might be embarking upon here?
Right here at Roanoke Arches, we meet every Sunday morning, 10:30 to noon, and we have a Facebook group called Roanoke Arches, so you can check that out and see what we do. But it's also just this community opportunity to reconnect across divides through music, dancing, rhythm, drumming, art making, and an opportunity for us to connect to our place here right near the river in Roanoke.
That sounds like a great opportunity to connect with others and, of course, nature and our native trees. Can you share one more time where people would find information, like the Facebook page? What's that called?
Yeah, so the weekly Sunday mornings here is Roanoke Arches, and the monthly event is under Star City Circle Singing. We have both a Facebook page and a meetup page, and we'll be offering more events too beyond our monthly circle.
That sounds like a really awesome opportunity, so come on out and sing with the trees. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Talkin Trees and that you learned a little something about the flowering dogwood. If you did, make sure that you like, subscribe, and share. And did you know that you could vote for Radford City Tree? If you haven't yet, what are you waiting for? Details on how to vote are in the description. Until next time, stay rooted, stay rad, and stay ready for more from Nursery Natives.